You have to see this. One of Trump's biggest fans in an interview with him had to, because it would be more than journalistic malpractice not to, had to ask some basic questions about the incoherence of Trump's tariff approach. And as you can imagine, it didn't go well. Because when Trump gets asked just on a fundamental level to justify his economic approach, he spirals. And it leads to even his biggest supporters being a little bit confused about what his plan is here. Actually, one of his biggest supporters on Fox News recently said, I know that Trump has a plan, but I hope he'll share it with us and tell us that it's going to be okay. He's not Jesus, ma'am. It's very weird. Very, very weird. Another Fox host, Maria Bartiromo, in an interview with him, pressed him a little bit. And you could tell it annoyed Trump. But what I want to do is she'll reference past times they've talked. And after we look at this, I want to show you a clip from a past time that, to me, makes so infuriating that people like Maria Bartiromo, while she asks a good question here, would have any surprise at what Trump is doing when long before he became president, while they were advocating for him, he was making clear, he was foreshadowing what his economic approach would look like. And yes, it'd be disastrous, but you ran cover for it, Maria. So here's the clip. Then we'll get on to that. If you appreciate this show, I've said it before, millions of people watch who aren't subscribed. Please do. If you're one of those folks, click the subscribe button. Here we go. Lots in the segment to discuss.
You spoke to the president of Mexico today. I want to talk about tariffs because even as you're seeing this optimism and excitement, there's some nervousness over your tariffs. Markets have been selling off. People are not sure how to view it. Why did you roll back or put a pause into some of the tariffs until April 2nd?
Because I wanted to help Mexico and Canada to a certain extent. We're a big, big country, and they do a lot of their business with us, whereas in our case, it's much less significant. We do very little with Canada by comparison. And I wanted to help the American car makers until April 2nd. April 2nd, it becomes all reciprocal. What they charge us, we charge them. It's a big deal, but what they charge us, we charge them. But
so I'll address everything he's saying. As always, he's wildly confused or being rather dishonest. But if you'll full screen this, Jaden, I think producer Jaden is actively getting nauseous right now, looking at the framing of this. How dare you, Fox Business? Under a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and you can't frame a shot better? What is this headroom?
But this is short-term, and I felt that for the good of the American car makers and the MCA, you know, the USMCA, it's Mexico, Canada. I thought it would be a fair thing to do. And so I gave them a little bit of a break for this short period of time.
But I asked you about this before, and I know you told me when I asked you, I said, you did use MCA, you put this together.
Yeah.
And yet then you come back and you change it up with these tariffs, and you said to me at that time, I did it because I can. I put an amendment in there, and I said in 6 years I can change it. But I think CEOs want to see predictability. They say, look, I have to speak with shareholders. I've got to make plans for CapEx spending. I can't if it's 20% one day and then it's off for a month and it's 25%.
Yeah.
So can you give us a sense of whether or not we are going to get clarity for the business community?
Well, I think so. But, you know, the tariffs could go up as time goes by, and they may go up. And, you know, I don't know if it's predictability. I think
so that's not clarity.
No, I think that they say that. You know, it sounds good to say. But for years, the globalists, the big globalists, have been ripping off the United States. They've been taking.
So Trump didn't like that because she said it's not clarity. You're not. She didn't go this far, but governing in a way that would allow for a stable economic environment. That's the sort of clarity you need from a president.
Taking money away from the United States, and all we're doing is getting some of it back. And we're going to treat our country fairly. This country has been ripped off from every nation in the world, every company outside in the world. We've been ripped off at levels never seen before. And all we're going to do is get it back. We're going to get a lot of it back. We're not going to let people take advantage of us anymore.
Get what back? What is he even? He's just wildly. I always say he's wildly confused or there's some malicious plot here that I can't exactly figure out. Because what's the plan? In his mind, what is the plan? Maybe he doesn't understand it, maybe he does and doesn't care. But to go through a few of the things that were said, and then we'll get on to the other clip of the two of them. But Maria Bartiromo said the last time they talked, when she asked, why are you doing this? He said, because I can. That is not a justification for anything. A parent says that, hey, I'm taking your phone away. Why? Because I can't. But the U.S. president, that just doesn't mean anything. I can throw a bowling ball off the top of a tall building. Doesn't mean I should. I could chop Jaden's leg off. Doesn't mean I should. The president could nuke someone randomly. Doesn't mean they should. So that's just a meaningless phrase. And then he goes on to talk about how, we're so ripped off and we've been getting wrecked by other countries in ways that is so unfair. And he also seems not to understand that a really important part of our economy is our exports, because other countries do buy things from us. An example that he's damaging and undermining is Canada buys a lot of U.S. liquor. Now they're taking that off of the shelves in response. But in many cases, because we are the wealthier country and consume more, we might end up buying more from other countries than they buy from us. But that doesn't mean they don't buy a lot from us. There's a big exchange going on, and he's undermining our end of it as well with his approach. And it comes from an ideological isolationist worldview, really, which is, the U.S. should just kind of be out on our own island doing our own thing. And the globalists have ruined everything. But while there's always adjustments we can make to leverage our power for ourselves and to look out for our own interests, that is what the global trade environment has been doing for us. So take a look at this. I'll try to describe for our podcast listeners. This was back in 1930. At this point, there was a contraction in global trade, Great Depression, some isolationism, and pre the sort of post-World War II world order, where the United States really started facilitating global trade in an unprecedented manner. And we're much closer in the sort of GDP competition with other countries. And then 70 years later, 70 years of this post-World War II, or, now I guess 60-ish years of the post-World War II world sole superpower, the United States, promoting, facilitating international organizations to uplift global trade, to enhance economic interconnectedness. And this is where we are in 2000. And then you have more years of it. Obviously, China now surging. And I'm for certain approaches to stay very competitive with China, as we are. We still have a $10 trillion larger GDP. But we have been the largest beneficiary. We have established our global economic dominance in large part because of the economic interconnectedness and interdependence of the world. And Trump wants to undermine all of that in a way that would, yes, hurt other countries, but would hurt us as well. Doesn't mean you don't make thoughtful policy decisions to protect certain industries when necessary, certain supply chains we feel more comfortable with in the United States only for national security reasons or other reasons. And then you tweak your policy to stay extra competitive, certain semiconductors, industries we want to enhance that, fine. But the reason his across the board approach is one he finds rational when it's not, is because ultimately he really does seem fond of isolationism, which would be horrifically disastrous for the United States' power, wealth, and influence on the world stage. Now, Maria Bartiromo should not be surprised at all about this, about the incoherence and irrationality of Trump's tariff policy, because before the election, she was having these same conversations with him.
About the criticism, and the Journal has done this as well, that if you do put something like a 200% tariff on a product, that it's only going to mean higher prices for consumers.
It's not. No, it doesn't mean that.
It's got to be passed on somehow.
No. All I'm doing is saying, I'll put 200 or 500. I don't care. I'll put a number where they can't sell one car into the United. I don't want them to sell their car because I don't want them hurting our car companies. We're going to have a lot of companies moving into the United States. When I use 200, I'm using it as a number. I don't want their car. They will not be able to sell cars. I'm not going to let them build a factory right across the border and sell millions of cars into the United States and destroy Detroit.
And we've covered a few there. She's saying, well, it gets passed on to someone, right? And he goes, nah, stop. We've covered a few of these Maria moments on her own show, even separate from Trump, but then also there with Trump, where she tries to make sense of his lack of sense. And they try to put a rational spin on an irrational governance. You know, I won't say who. Someone in my family, when we were growing up, saw a treadmill running and thought it was rational to stick his fingers under the little thing with it's moving and then couldn't pull them out. I think was the noise that was made. Still has marks on his hand. And I stood there going, not doing anything. And then someone else had to pull him out. I don't know. I panicked. Okay. I was young. He and I were both more rational in that moment than Trump's tariff policy. Let me think of another example. I was riding a golf cart once and I thought, hey, it would be cool to go under that tree. And instead I ran right into it. My golf cart driving there was more rational than Trump's tariff approach. What's another one? What's another one? I think you get the point, okay? Here's a reminder as well of people like PBD who are soon going to be panicking over the economic aftermath of the person they supported policy. He should have been warned.
Cash flow income is not going up. Middle Americans may be like, I can't afford to do this. Yes, we'd love to have it made in America, but you know, a regular person making $55,000, you can afford this. So how do you balance and manage tariffs so the average person is not affected by it? Please.
But before I do that, so let me just say already tariffs, because to me, I think it's the most beautiful word in the dictionary. More beautiful than love, more beautiful than any word I know, tariff.
Look, you were warned. When that's his response, you should have been warned that this was not someone who even understood his own policy. By the way, speaking of Maria and Trump moments, back during the campaign, the stock market was doing well and Trump was trying to take credit for it. What does that mean now that the stock market's being hindered by his policies?
The Biden team can say, well, if things are so bad, how come the stock market's on a roll?
Because they think I'm going to be elected.
That you think the stock market's rallying because people think you're going to be elected?
I do, yeah. If you take a look at Iowa, if you take a look at New Hampshire, the stock market's been going crazy since then and long before then. When I announced I was running, I took the lead early, and then I beat everybody, including Ron DeSantis. I call him DeSantis now. I took the other names.
Mr. President, back to the economy first.
So way back then, way back before the election, the stock market was doing well, even though everything was terrible because of expectations that Trump would win. He said, made no sense, wasn't true, but that's what he said. But then he actually gets elected and then starts announcing his major economic proposals and doing this tariff on, tariff off thing. And it ends up causing panic with the markets. So what does he say about that? He just waves it off. He said it's the globalists. This was his response to the stock market. The globalists are afraid that the United States is going to do better than ever. What? That doesn't make any sense. You know, I wake up every day to an alarm, probably 2 hours before I get out of bed. And every night before that, I lie to myself and I say, I'm going to set my alarm for X time. I don't want to tell you all, okay? Because then you're going to calculate it and you're like, Luke, you should grind harder or something. But every night I go, no, tomorrow I'm going to get up at whatever, 6 a.m. or something. And I'm gonna work out, and I'm gonna journal, and I'm gonna do all these things. And every day like clockwork, I end up snoozing all the way until I actually want to wake up. And that little insane cycle I do with myself is more rational. That was the other example I wanted to give. You knew I was coming back to it. Than Trump's tariff approach. So for the Fox News and MAGA media figures who are going to try to rationalize the irrational, just stop, because you're going to make yourself look silly. Because you kind of already have where we hear so many people saying, see, Trump knows that this tariff approach would be disastrous. That's why he paused them, because it was really just negotiation. Oh, they're back on? No, never mind. These are good. Just be honest, be principled, and be factual, and you won't get embarrassed so frequently. Share your thoughts in the comments.